very much. That was very kind. It was a nice trip down memory lane there. Thank you for inviting me. I am a long-term MIT employee. Spent about 20 years in the power and generation, acquiring those things and then operating them to serve electricity. So that was kind of a closed area. It's a small community, kind of tight-knit in Northern California. Didn't get too much involvement in water issues or domestic water treatment, irrigation, and those things. So in the last 16 months in this job, it's been a real eye-opener. It's been a lot of fun. Had to learn and do a lot of things I've never done before, including this. But it's been pretty exciting. So I thought talking with Melissa to come up with maybe the top 4 things that are going on in MID. Go over those with you and then open it up to questions. So number 1 these days is the drought. If you recall, last year was pretty dry, and this year is extremely dry. But MID is sitting in a spot where it's not horrible. I think from Bakersfield, say up to Redding, it's pretty bad in a lot of locations. So we've had some storage we can carry over to now, and a little bit of rain and snow. So our farmers will get about enough water to not only keep their trees alive, but also to get a pretty decent crop. So things around here are not looking as bad as many places up and down the valley. It's been kind of a rocky road. One of my bosses is here, Director Mensinger. So if I misspeak, he can throw a tomato wedge at me. But getting the policies in place for a drought like this, and the rules and the prices and so forth, has been kind of a rocky road. But I think we've got most of it set and should begin next Sunday, I think, we'll put water in the canals. So the customers have to do a lot too. If you can picture, it'll be the first time in over 100 years that farmers have not been able, will not be able to just pay a little bit more and get some more water. So that's how it's run for decades. This will be the first year where there's a limited amount. It'll get metered out to you. There's about, on average, they irrigate about 3 inches worth on the land per application. So there'll be about 8 events, and they'll have to make it stretch all summer. And then they like to apply one more round after they harvest for the trees. So it'll be a cooperative effort between the farmers and management and the hitch tenders to try to get through this, but it does not look too bad. Quite a bit better than, say, a month and a half ago when we were not at 24 inches, we were down at 18, and the farmers tell me that's about the limit. Permanent crop won't make it much lower than 18. It's going to die. You won't get a cash crop to make the mortgage payment and so forth. So that's where we are. Whatever happens, and I think that's an okay summary on the drought. The second topic that I hit is the domestic water treatment plant that's been in the paper now and again with the city of Modesto. So things are looking up at that plant. We are moving ahead pretty fast to rebuild it. So there was a contractor problem and an engineering problem that got extremely bad. But now we have a new design, new contractors on the job, and they're about 70% along on rebuilding it. It actually required us to, because the installation was so faulty, to demolish 6 concrete basins, take them all the way down to the reinforcing steel bars, and then pour new concrete back. So that process is about 80% done, 70 to 80% done. So with continued luck, we'll have that producing. That's the second half of the plant. There'll be 2 phases producing water in about 1 year and serving the city of Modesto. So that part is coming along very nicely. Just for information's sake, I believe right now MID produces enough water in a year that it's about half of what the city of Modesto needs, and they get the other half from their own wells. When that phase is done, pardon me, that will pretty much serve most of the city of Modesto's needs for treated water, and it's a lot less alkaline, and it's not hard water like comes up from the wells. It's pretty good water. So things are looking up there, and we do have a dispute with the city, but we've boxed it off. We're going through a process that we both agreed to have a judge that's, both sides pay for the judge, and you can accelerate it and get an answer to the question of who should pay for the cost overall in the past. So each step we take now with the city on any new contract or any new improvement out there, we review with them, and we don't move forward unless there's agreement on both parts. So that's how we're operating today. So the past dispute is working its way through this judge process, and it'll probably take another year. And all new things are going pretty well for us. It was okay working with Greg Nyhoff. That was an upbeat thing. So now we'll have to get to know whoever the new city manager is there. So that's the drought and the domestic water. Melissa thought you might want to hear about rates. So there's not a lot of news on the rate front. I guess for all the customers and whether you're homeowner or business, probably the most important message is our cost. There's not a lot of cost pressure on MID. Of course, we don't earn a profit, but there's not a lot of upward pressure like there was 5 or 10 years ago where you had such high increases in the power supply cost that you had to seek rate increases. So there's not much of that. Within the next year or two, there will be some need for capital improvements, especially at Don Pedro, because we're going through relicensing on that. That is 50 years old, so it's going to have some refurbishment, probably on the order of $50 million, maybe $280, which sounds like a lot, but it's not a lot on the power supply, really. So that will require a little bit of bond issuance and maybe some rate increases, but that's not on the horizon in the next year or two. That's a little ways out. And the rest of the rate pressures are probably related to the wires and poles, the transmission and distribution. We had a borrowing that we've just about run out. There's maybe $13 million left. They last, every time you borrow it, they last for 4 or 5 years. Because of the economic downturn, we've been able to stretch that one out for an extra 4 years, and it may run out, depending, in the next 2 years. So there may be some need for some rate increases there. But nothing on the horizon in the 10% range or the 5% range. Most of these needs are pretty modest. I always, pardon me, hopefully there's no one here from the cable company, but I always look at it in terms of what does internet access cost and what do those rates go up at, or Comcast or something. So the power supply area is pretty good for right now. The drought may impact it a little bit, but it will not be huge for us because we don't get a large amount of power from Don Pedro. We get some, but it's not a large percentage. So that's the rate picture. Let's see, what was the other one? Oh, Don Pedro. So 50 years ago, which sounds strange, but that's how long it was, they applied to the federal government for a license to build new Don Pedro. It was issued. So that's run out, and 3 years ago we had to get ready to file the papers that we filed this week to ask for an extension or a new license on Don Pedro. So it's us and Turlock. Turlock Irrigation is the larger partner, so they take about 2/3 of the water, and about 1/3 of it is ours. So 3 years of preparation, a lot of public meetings. Every one of them you could attend if you wanted to. You can go on the MID.org website and find out anything you wanted to know about licensing of a hydroelectric project, because it's all posted there. And this is about the halfway point. So we file it with the federal regulators in Washington, D.C., and it will take them until about 2019 to finish the process of reviewing it, holding public hearings, coming up with decisions on environmental impacts, and then what we may have to do, us and Turlock may have to do to mitigate those things. So quite a few years to go. But as we mentioned at the board meeting this week, once it's done, that's another 40 or 50 year license, so we won't have to do it again until 2069 or something like that, which I'll probably still be working, but so that's been a long process, but it's going pretty well, I think.